read Matthew 7, 1 through 6. This is Jesus' most famous sermon. It's his longest sermon we have in Scripture. He basically touches on all the, major topics of the day. He's really calling people to a higher standard of living. He's talking to primarily all Jews that he's teaching to. It's called the Sermon on the Mount because he was on a mountainside. As he taught it, most likely there were a couple thousand people listening to him, men and women. And it's one of the just most interesting passages of Scripture we have, and one of the most challenging sermons that we have in all of Scripture. And Jesus was a genius. Sometimes, like in this part, so the title of my message today is Planks and Pearls. And Jesus here, he talks about a lot of kind of random stuff. And sometimes we're like, is Jesus just being random or cryptic or what is this? But Jesus was a genius and creative. And he taught using modern things that the people understood in this day. So let's read Matthew 7, verse 1 through 6. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? And some versions translate it as plank. Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. Let's pray. Jesus, speak to us today. Speak through my words. May it be you speaking and not me. As we look at your word, may we be challenged by it. God, thank you for those being baptized. May this be an awesome day of celebration in your midst. We love you, Jesus, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. So, Jesus here is primarily talking about judging. And today is going to be a day that I challenge you to not be a people of judgment, but a people of grace and peace and love. And it's so natural for us as human beings to want to judge. We're prone to it. In fact, I experience judgment all the time. You want to know how? Because I have kids, all right? And those of you that have children, you understand. So where are the single people at? Single people, raise it. Put your hands up high, single people. Okay, leave them up. Look around. They're single. Keep them up. Look around. I'm helping you out here, guys and ladies, all right? Scope them out, all right? Okay, you can put them down, all right? Single people, I was trying to help you for a second. So we got a good amount of single people. So where are the parents in this place? How many have kids? Raise your hand, all right? So we're about half and half today, it looks like. How many of you currently have like young children in your home that you are taking care of? Raise your hand, all right? So a good amount of you too. All right. So recently, Chris and I went to dinner, and we're at dinner, and all of a sudden, like the couple near us, that's middle-aged, they start casting these judgmental stares at us, right? Because, we have two boys. We have a 1-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and it can get a little wild at dinner, and our kids are relatively well-behaved. I actually feel like I kind of got them locked down, right? But there's times when you're at dinner and it gets a little wild, right? Food's flying, we're yelling, we're screaming, we're trying to keep them together. They're playing, they're crawling over stuff, and it was one of those nights where they were just a little wild, and so this couple near us kept like kind of giving us dirty looks. And I started getting mad, right? I'm getting frustrated. And so I'm like, Chrissy, I'm going to say something. She's like, do not, no, I was like, no, they need to know. Like, I need to tell them, like, this isn't easy, all right? They don't understand me. They don't know me, all right? And so I started getting frustrated. And I'm like, that's it. And I'm like, you got a problem? No, I didn't say that to them. I wish I would have. I should have said something. But they were like just giving us the dirtiest like stank eye, right? Like every few minutes. And I finally was like, look, I'm talking to Chris. I'm like, look, if you want a nice date night out, you should not come to Chili's, all right? Like Chili's is a family establishment. If you go to Chili's, you know that there might be some families, it might be a little crazy, all right? So if you want a nice date, you should not be at Chili's. This is all the things I was thinking in my head that I wanted to say to them. Like, you need to go somewhere else. You should not come to Chili's. This is for families. So I'm getting more and more mad. And it was just one of those moments of realizing just how quick we are to judge, but then also how when we're judged, it doesn't make us feel good, does it? I was embarrassed. And I was doing everything I could, my wife and I. We were doing everything we could to keep our kids in line just because I could see these stares coming from this couple. And I didn't want them to have their dinner ruined. I wasn't trying to. In fact, we were over the top, like trying to keep our kids under control, and I felt so judged, and it was this horrible feeling I had that came over my wife and I, and it turned into frustration, and it turned into anger. And what happens is, in the church, we judge one another, and then we judge people who don't know Jesus, and what we're doing is we're causing them to feel what I felt, and I understand what it means to be judged, and we can do this, and we can really hurt people, and we can cause them to get disillusioned by the church, to get hurt by people in the church, to get hurt by friends or family members or loved ones, and this can cause a serious divide. And so Jesus here says, do not judge. That's how he starts this passage. He says, judge not, that you be not judged. Now, I want to give you the Greek word. So judge, this word judge, can be taken in a few different ways. So I want you to understand what the Greek word says. That the Greek word that they use here for judge is the word chronos. Everybody say chronos, all right? Sorry, did I say chronos? Where did that come from? Kryno, all right? I was close. The Greek word kryno, I think it's in some movie I saw. The Greek word is kryno. So here's what it means. To distinguish or to decide mentally or judicially, but then it goes on and it gets more intense. This word also is used in the way of meaning to try, to condemn, to punish, and condemns on there twice, but conclude, and then finally to damn. And I mean, that is a harsh word to be using. And Jesus is saying that do not be thinking this way towards people. He says, judge not that you be not judged. And he goes on and he says, for when the judgment you pronounce, with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So listen, this is a sin here of hypocrisy. Jesus calls them hypocrites. And he uses this great illustration that we're going to talk about here in a moment. But man, we have a church, and people always tell me, like, people be like, man, you have a church, you got a lot of hipsters in your church. You guys ever heard this term, hipsters? Anybody ever heard of the term hipster? So people say to me, like, you have a lot of hipsters in your church. And I'm like, I don't even know what that really means. I don't even know what a hipster really is. But in fact, I wore a tie today. How do you guys feel? This is the second time I've worn a tie in the history of Project Church. So I don't think this is very hipster of me. But anyways, so people tell me, you have a hipster church. And I was like, okay, I guess sort of. And so I started like looking into, and I know a little bit about the term hipster and these people that are classified as hipsters. And man, hipsters, they can be pretty judgmental, right? Because hipsters, this is their mentality. Like, you drive a car, I ride my bike because I care about the environment, right? I'm a hipster, okay? And then they also would say, you buy corporate, I only buy local because I care about my city and I care about local people. I only go to farmers markets. You go to Safeway, right? Like, this is the hipster mentality. Not only that, but they would say like, oh, I don't listen to that mainstream music. I listen to music that you've probably never even heard of it, right? You've never heard of the music I've listened to. In fact, they listen to music that no one's ever heard of. I saw this video. No, serious. I saw this video, and they were throwing out. It was at this festival, this music festival, and they were throwing out these names of bands. They're like, hey, have you heard? And they were throwing these random names, and they weren't real band names. And every one of these people was like, oh yeah, they're awesome. Like, they have this really eclectic mix of like, and they're going on and on about this band that doesn't even exist yet. That's a hipster, okay? So I was thinking about this, and I'm thinking about this idea that, man, we as people, it's easy to be on our high horse, isn't it? It's easy to look down upon others when they don't think like us, act like us, and especially in the church when people might commit sins that we feel like, oh, as a Christian, you should not be doing that. And so I want to read Matthew Henry. He's a theologian that I enjoy to read. He said this. It should be on the screen for you. He said, it is as strange that a man can be in a sinful, miserable condition and not be aware of it, as that a man should have a beam in his eye and not consider it. But the God of this world blinds their minds. Here is a good rule for reprovers. First, reform thyself. So naturally, we want to reprove people at times. We want to correct people. But we need to first look at ourselves. And so I want to give you 3 quick points how we need to focus to not be judgmental people. So we cannot be a people of judgment. So number 1 is this: focus on your heart. Everybody say, my heart. But you got to put your hand over it too right now. Say, my heart. Focus on your heart. So some of us jump to conclusions that we should not jump to when we see other people committing sins. And we have to be careful because sometimes we can condemn someone based on their actions, and what we're doing is we're confusing actions with essence. Now, if someone saw one glimpse into my life, and I sin every day, all right? I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. We all sin. If someone saw one glimpse into my life, one little moment, and they saw a sin that I committed in a day like I do on most days, they could really judge me based on that one moment. And sometimes we see one glimpse into someone's life, and what we do is we rush to judgment. We cast judgment, and we say, oh, this person, they don't really love God. Look at this thing in their life. Look at what they've done. Look at this sin. How could they do that and really love God? And we're taking one little glimpse in their life, and we're saying that's who they are. That is their essence. Even though, in fact, they're just like you and I, and we're taking this glimpse, and it's distorting our view of them, and that's when we can begin to judge others. And what happens is that we need to be a people, and what God is saying, what Jesus is saying here is, man, focus first on your own heart. Stop worrying about everybody else. Stop worrying about what they're doing and their actions and their sin, and start focusing on your own. So I got a little object here I want to bring out. So the scripture, Jesus uses the example of a plank or a log, the ESV says. And he says, some of you have a plank in your eye, and yet you're going to your brothers and saying, hey, you have a speck. And so, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous, and Jesus is an emphasizer. I love Jesus because he emphasizes. I like to emphasize things, sometimes overemphasize things. And Jesus uses his example, and this is what he's doing. He's saying, okay, so if I came right here, since Kirk's right here. Kirk, what's up, man? So this is what Jesus is doing. He's saying, some of you are like this. Hey, Kirk, man, this is kind of awkward, and I don't really know how to tell you, but some of us have been talking, and we've kind of noticed that you got something in your eye, man. And it's super awkward, and seriously, man, can I get it for you? Can I just reach down there and get that speck? Let me get that out of your eye because it's really not good, and it's causing people to stumble, and they're all looking at you, and they're saying, man, look at that thing in his eye. We need to get that out. So can I get that out real quick? And sorry, man, I know this is awkward. My bad. And that's what we do, right? And that's what Jesus was saying. He's saying some of you have this huge plank in your eye, and you want to focus on your brother and the speck that he has in his. And Jesus is using this overemphasis to bring us to the point of saying, man, we need to focus on ourselves first. We need to focus on our heart, on our issues, on our struggles. It's so easy to slam the gavel of judgment. I mean, it's easy. In fact, sometimes it's easier for us because then we don't have to focus on our issues. We don't have to worry about our planks when we can just point out the issues in other people, the specks in our brother's eye. We don't have to deal with, because it's much harder to deal with your own stuff than to point out someone else's problem. Because you can point it out and then walk away. You don't really have to deal with it. You're just pointing it out and say, hey, man, you need to fix that. I'm out of here. And all the while, you have this plank sticking out of your eye. So we need to focus on our hearts. You need to focus on your heart. I need to focus on my heart and say, God, where do I have something that is not pleasing to you? What in my life is separating me from you? What in my heart and in my life is pulling me away from what you've called me to be? And we need to look at that. We need to focus on that and work on getting that out. But it takes time. It takes effort. It takes work. And sometimes it's painful. Have you ever got something in your eye for real? It does not feel good, does it? And sometimes you can't get it out, and you're in the mirror and you're trying to see, and it's hard. It takes work. It's painful. And some of us have these issues in our lives, and we don't want to deal with them. Why? Because it hurts. Because it's a struggle. But Jesus is saying, first, focus on your own heart. Stop being a hypocrite. Stop being a hypocrite. He uses hypocrite several times in this Sermon on the Mount. Focus on your heart. Number 2, we need to focus on God's heart. The heart of our Father. The heart of our God. Now, I write, I journal, and then I share stuff on Twitter and Facebook sometimes that I like. And this week I was praying and preparing for this message, and I felt like God just kind of dropped a few things in my heart that I wrote down, and I was like, wow, that's what we need to hear. And I wrote this down this week. The cry of our heart should be to know the heart of our God. And so many of us, we talk that way, like, I want to know your heart, God, but it's not really the cry of our heart. We use, lip service, and we talk the talk, but it's not really coming out of the overflow of our spirit. And God's heart is one of love, not judgment. So here's why we need to focus on God's heart. Because when we focus on God's heart and what he wants and who he is and how he sees people, then we stop focusing on other people's problems. When we focus on our heart and his heart and where we need to fix things and where we need to get right between him and what his heart is for other people, we don't turn our attention onto everything everyone else is doing and how they need to be living and how they need to be acting and how they shouldn't be talking that way and acting that way and going that place and committing that sin. We turn and we say, God, I just want your heart. And God, his heart, you know what his heart is? It's a heart of grace. God's heart is a heart of love. And yet, what do? We have hearts of judgment. And Jesus is saying, you have to stop this. You have to stop this mindset, this attitude, this spirit of judging one another and turn it to what I want and what I'm calling you to, and that's one of love and grace. Now, I'm not saying today, and understand this, here in a few verses in chapter 7, Jesus literally says, you'll know a tree by its fruit. And so we can see when a tree isn't bearing any fruit, we know that there's a problem. And when a tree is bearing bad fruit, we also know there's a problem. So in Scripture, it talks often about how we need to go to our brothers and in graciousness and with gentleness, correct them in love. And so there's a time for that. But what Jesus is talking about here in Matthew 7 and as he's teaching and preaching, he's not talking about you're going to your brothers and you're correcting them and, I don't want you to do that. What he's saying is stop judging them. Stop condemning them. Stop damning them, as the word literally meant. Stop this idea of look at what they're doing wrong. You're not doing it in love. You're not doing it in grace. You're doing it in judgment. You're doing it with hate. You're doing it with anger. You're even doing it to take the attention off of yourself and onto them so you don't have to worry about your stuff. And so Jesus is being clear here that, man, you need to change your heart. You need to focus on the Father's heart. Psalm 51:10 says, create in me a clean heart, O God. We need to have a clean heart. We need to cry out for a clean heart. We need to cry out for God's heart. You see, there's a song, and it says, break my heart for what breaks yours. And I love that. I love that line. Because I've prayed that often after hearing that song. I've prayed that often. I said, God, what breaks your heart? Let it break mine. And I'll tell you this, that what breaks God's heart is Christians judging one another. What breaks God's heart is Christians judging the world. The world doesn't know any different. People that don't know God, they don't know any different. They don't know him. They don't have a relationship with him. Of course they're living contrary to his word. And yet we want to cast judgment and hate instead of showing love and inviting them into the grace of God. Now, it would be, and I want to give you an example because I've had this happen in my life. I had a friend, invite me over and they wanted to show me, I was hanging out and they showed me their new car. Like, yo, dude, check out this car. I just picked this up, man. It's so awesome. And so I check out this car. It's got that new car smell, right? You get in, there's nothing like a new car smell. Nothing like it. So I get in. I'm like, wow, this thing is plush, right? This is nice. It's a sick whip. That's what all the kids say, right? And so that was lame, I know. And so I'm checking out this car, and I'm like, man, it's super nice. And then I start thinking things, right? I start thinking, man, weren't they having like money problems not that long ago? And didn't they like ask for help? I remember them asking for help from someone. Their money problems. And they just bought this new car. And then I started thinking this way, like this is like the uber spiritual, judgmental Christian mindset that I still even fight at times. I started thinking this way, man, they bought this new car. You know what they could have done with all this money for God? You know all the great spiritual things they could have done? They could have donated that to this or that or given it to here. And man, God could have done a lot of amazing things with that money. We start casting judgment. And we think that it's okay. And we do it even with a spiritual tone to it. And like thinking God could have done something better with this. And it's so easy to cast judgment on others without really knowing the situation and without really knowing what God has spoken to them, instead of just saying, you know what? That was between them and God. It's not my concern. It's not something that I need to be worried about, and it's not something that I should be talking about to other people. Because that's when it gets really judgmental, is when we don't just think it, but then we start talking to other people. Like, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? He just got a new car. Yeah, can you believe it? And we have these judgmental mindsets. We need to focus on God's heart. God's heart is for people, not against them. And in the church, we've been notorious for being against everything. We're against this, and we say no to this. And instead of, man, what are we for? We need to be for people. We need to be for grace. We need to be for love. We need to be for graciousness to every individual. We need to be for forgiveness. And we need to be for pointing people to God and to his heart, and not casting judgment left and right. And Jesus, he does this, he says to them, and he calls them out and says, you hypocrites, stop pointing out this little issue in your brother's eye when you have a huge issue in your own. God's heart is for people. When we focus on God's heart, you know what changes in us? We begin to change how we see people, how we look at people, how we connect to people, which leads to the third and final point. And that's that we need to focus on lost hearts. So here's the progression, man. We need to focus on our heart and on God's heart and getting ourselves right and getting ourselves connected to God and what his heart is. But let me tell you right now, God's heart is for the lost. God's heart is for people that don't know him. The Bible tells us that God's will is that none should perish. He doesn't want anyone to perish. And so we need to be a people that focus. And again, when you focus on lost hearts, you're not worried about judging your brother and your sister and every person next to you and the little issues that they have done or little sins they've committed, because you're so focused on everyone out there that needs to know him and needs to meet him for the first time. Now, verse 6, I'm going to read it. Again, one of the, I believe, most, misunderstood verses. I've heard it preached a bunch of different ways, multiple different ways. And I'm going to do my best today to kind of share what I believe God wanted to share and what I've seen and learned from things that I've read. But verse number 6 says, do not give to dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. So again, I don't believe Jesus is random. I believe Jesus was brilliant, and he took every conversation and moved it, and everything he said had such meaning and depth to it. And so here he brings out two animals that really were seen as the bottom of culture in their society, especially because he's talking to Jews. Dogs in this day, they didn't have pet dogs like we do, okay? Dogs were scavengers. They were wild animals just roaming through the streets, scavenging through trash, trying to find food. They were dirty. They were disease-ridden. People wouldn't touch them. They would not touch these animals. They would not touch dogs. He says, don't give to dogs what is holy. Then he says, don't throw to pigs pearls. You're not going to give pearls to pigs. Pearls, of course, were of great value during this day, of utmost value. And here he's talking about pigs, which in the Old Testament, if you've read the Old Testament at all, you've seen that the Jews were not allowed to touch pigs, eat pigs. I mean, I don't know, that's a bummer for me. My wife makes me eat turkey bacon. She's like super healthy. But man, when I get some real bacon, that's some serious stuff right there. That's heaven. But I don't really get to eat it at home. I have to sneak away. So if you ever want to invite me over for some real bacon, because that's why I'm so skinny. She won't feed me real bacon. But man, they wouldn't touch. I mean, God told them you're not allowed to touch pigs. Wow, they're unclean. Again, they eat trash. They eat the leftovers. They're just dirty animals. They don't sweat, that whole thing. And so God told them you're not allowed to touch these animals. So Jesus uses like the two very unclean animals that this culture and these people understood, the Jews. And so I've heard it, I've heard theologians, I've heard preachers say, don't share your dreams with people who are going to reject them. Because they're going to kick them to the curb and they're going to turn and attack you. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. You could kind of swing it that way. I like that. That's good too. But as I studied it and thought about it, I believe Jesus here, and what a lot of theologians would agree, is that Jesus here is talking about lost people. He's talking about people that don't know him. And so, understand this. I don't believe Jesus is saying, okay, so don't share with lost people because they don't deserve it. They're dogs. You're not going to give them what's holy. They're pigs. They're going to just, don't give them pearls. They're just going to trample on foot. And it says, and then turn and attack you. But I believe what Jesus is saying is you have to be wise. Because I have people in my life who I've shared the truth of the gospel with and the love of God with, and they have received it. Not completely, but they've been open to it. And then there's been times where I kept going with them, like a few days later, a few weeks later, and then they got upset. And they turned on me. And so I believe Jesus here, he's saying, you need to share with lost people. In fact, Jesus gives us the Great Commission. Go to all nations, right? Make disciples of all nations, all people. It doesn't matter their race or background or where they're from. Samaritan, Jew, Gentile, it doesn't matter. Go to all people and share the gospel, share the truth. So Jesus is saying that here, but he's saying, be wise. Be careful. Because there may be a time where you share, but then you have to move on, because if you keep pressing, they're going to turn and attack you. They're going to turn and come after you. But we need to be a people that focus on lost hearts. Because God's given us a commission. He's given us a call. And let me tell you right now, when we are so focused on judging one another, we have very little time to focus on loving lost people, on loving other people. And so Jesus here is talking like, stop this judging. Stop this worrying about these little stupid things, the little speck in your brother's eye, and you want to call him out for it. You want to make a big deal about it. And Jesus is saying, man, we need to turn our attention from that to one of love and grace and looking outside of us and saying, who can I minister? Who can I love on? I wrote this week. And understand, before I say this, sometimes we want to say things and we want to shout judgment because it makes us feel better, because we get angry about something. And that's why we need to be careful, man, what we post on Facebook and Twitter. And there's so much drama on there, and we need to think before I say, don't just think before you speak. Think before you post, okay? Both. We need to think before we speak as well. But sometimes we want to shout these judgmental things. Why? Because it makes us feel better. And we feel like, I need to say something because I got all this tension and frustration built up. I need to just let it out. But I wrote this week. We need to focus more on what people need to hear than what we want to say. Because sometimes we want to say something, but that's not what they need to hear. And let me tell you what people need to hear. They need to hear hope. People need to hear hope. They need to hear that there's a God that loves them. And there's a God that can forgive them. And it doesn't matter their past or their mistakes or how many planks they have in their eyes, that God loves them and still has a plan and a purpose for them. And he's created them and he's gifted them. And he sees them right where they are. And he has a plan for them. That's what we need to speak. People need hope. So yeah, there might be times when you feel like, man, I really want to say something. I really want to say this. It'll feel so good to just let it out. But is that what people need to hear? Do they need to hear judgment, or do they need to hear love? Do they need to hear you condemning, or do they need to hear you and see you loving them? We can complain that Christians aren't acting the way we think they should be acting. We can complain that the world doesn't understand, they don't live by the things of God, by the Bible. Or we can live a life an exemplary life of love and grace and righteousness and just pointing people to him, showing people his love, showing people his plan. Abraham Lincoln said this: we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. It's all about perspective, isn't it? It's all about perspective. And sometimes we're looking at our brothers and sisters in Christ, in the church, and we're saying, man, Look at all these thorns they got coming out of them. I mean, all this sin and all these mistakes. Instead of saying, man, there's a flower blooming of faith, and they're a work in progress just like me. And yeah, they got some rough sides and some pointy sides and some, I don't necessarily like that, but God's still working on them, and let me get in relationship with them. Because let me tell you right now, it's easy to judge people when we don't really have a relationship with them. It's so easy to cast judgment because working through situations and issues with people, that takes work. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes relationship. And so Christians, and I believe, and I've been guilty of this, we want to cast judgment because it's easy. Because it's easy. We want to cast judgment on the world because it's easy. What's hard is developing relationships, loving people, being gracious, being patient. That's hard. We need to be a people who focus on the lost, who focus on the hearts of others. I know that many of you in here, you come from different backgrounds. And I don't think you came in here by accident, because I believe there's someone here that needs to meet Jesus for the first time or needs to rededicate their life to him today. And you're one of those people that, man, you felt judged. You felt like you weren't good enough. Like you've made too many mistakes. Why would God want me? He desperately wants you. He desperately loves you. And he died for you in a desperate way on a cross. Because he had a plan and a purpose for your life, and he wanted to take all your sin and all my sin onto himself so you could be set free and so you could have the hope of eternity. That's it, man. We need to share hope because God has given us hope. Jesus has given us hope. Would you bow your heads with me?